Hey, fellow muscle nerds, exercise enthusiasts, and just general dweebs. Wanted to put out this video really quickly to talk about this thing that I'm just starting to do. We'll see if it works out, where I'm having some of you guys follow along as I learn about the neuromuscular system and the nervous system in general in this functional neuroanatomy course that I'm lucky enough to be taking. I find it to be a really exciting course. It's got a lot of material, there's a lot of content, there's a lot of new stuff. And I think it helps to put in perspective just how little I've learned about the nervous system prior to this point. Because there are some really fundamental, quick things that have already changed the way that I think about the nervous system just in the 6-7 weeks that I've been taking this course. So I'm sure that'll only compound itself and maybe increase exponentially as the semester goes on and into the future. But I want to share some of what I'm learning. It started with our good friend Tim, who wanted me to bring him in on some of these discussions, and I think it's great for us to include as many people as want to be seriously involved in this. Now, it doesn't mean everybody has to be ponying up ideas, but just coming along for the ride. These are great concepts, great ideas that I think will help a lot of people. Anybody who is concerned about human movement, muscle performance, any of the things that we should be thinking about in this world of exercise, they should, anybody should be at least curious about the kind of stuff that I'm learning in this course, that we will be learning, I guess, together. So, in particular, I think it's good to start this now because over the last couple of weeks, we've been covering in this class the somatosensory system and the motor system, more or less. And these are important because I think these are the two of the most obviously relevant systems to anybody who studies exercise, because they have very clear, in my opinion, implications for how we are going to take in information from the outside, sensory stuff, input, and how we're going to create and orchestrate and ultimately perform whatever motor performance or motor output we're trying to do, the output of the task. So that's obviously the motor system. Obviously, exercise, really, when you boil it down, is just generating force in some kind of strategic way. We're doing that by applying an external force to the body, managing internal forces, we're creating a scenario, and then the body has to respond to that in some way. And that response is going to govern how the body can ultimately adapt to whatever stresses we're given it. So, if we understand how information comes in and how information goes out, I think it's a no-brainer. It becomes obvious that maybe we can have a better understanding of what we're actually doing when we are training ourselves or training someone else. So it helps us to understand exercise broadly. And an important thing that becomes very clear early on, and I won't go into a lot of detail on this right now because I want to keep this short, is that, for instance, the sensory system. It's not like everything just comes in and follows the same path going up, right? We've got, let's say, touch sense and pressure, and that may take a particular pathway on the way up to the brain. And then we have pain sensation, and that'll often take a different pathway as far as where it crosses in the spinal cord, and then, how it goes up, through the brainstem and ultimately through the thalamus and to the somatosensory cortex. And based on where these different functional pathways diverge, basically where one crosses versus another, and how one exactly takes its path from bottom to top, that'll determine perhaps what kind of consequences there could be from damage. If you have damage to one side of the spinal cord, well, how's that going to affect pain sensation below that point compared to touch, compared to vibration, compared to certain proprioceptive inputs? Because these different systems all have different potential pathways they can take up the spine. So that's very important. And then, in a similar vein, the output can vary. We have stuff coming from the motor cortex that goes down and stimulates muscles to contract or attempts to. So it sends stimulatory or excitatory signals. But then we've also got other places below the cortex, subcortical regions. Things like the cerebrospinal tract, the vestibular spinal tract, the reticulospinal tract, right? These are three other tracts that are also involved in movement or in motor signals. But they often, we'll explore that later, can have an inhibitory effect. So we get to understand a little bit more how certain parts of the brain and the brainstem region are responsible for perhaps, causing stuff to happen, causing a contraction to occur, stimulating stuff. And then other parts are responsible for putting on the brakes. And when we understand that, again, we can understand, if there's damage to this region, what's that going to do for a person's voluntary motion or involuntary motions? How are these things maybe going to affect spinal reflexes? We can examine some of the clinical implications of different kinds of damage and different kinds of training potentially on these different regions, just based on our understanding of just the fundamentals of these different systems. And I don't want to get into any more depth than that right now. Just want to throw out there that these are some of the things that we're trying to understand. And again, I'm just, along for the ride myself. This is the stuff that I'm getting to learn from a brilliant professor here who's been studying neuroanatomy and the nervous system for longer than I've been alive, well longer, and who's fortunately guiding me on this journey. And then I'm just trying to pay that forward and help some of my friends out who might also be curious and not have the opportunity to attend some of these great classes that I'm getting to take. And so it's my way of trying to share the journey a little bit. So hopefully I'll be able to keep any videos on this kind of short and to the point, keep them rather concise, and keep the language from getting too overbearing. But always welcome feedback, always welcome questions. I will try to share the resources I have and the little tiny bit of understanding I might have with those of you out there who are curious about it. So yeah, that's all I really had to say. Just wanted to kind of do a primer, a little upfront, here's what I'm trying to do kind of talk, and hopefully that resonates with a few of you, and we can have a good time going forward with exploring some of this stuff. And maybe in the future, once my own competency gets to a point where I'm comfortable with it, I can put together some more formal stuff explaining some of these concepts in my own words with a little bit more authority, if I can use that word. So yeah, thanks for being a part of it, and I think this is going to be fun. So just wanted to say a few words about that. Let's learn.